Hello everyone, and welcome to another Stata pod class. This is Tim and Michelle, and we're trying to figure out how to use Stata. We've now learned how to spell it, so we're making progress. So hopefully you took a look at the first steps video that I tried to do, and now Michelle is going to bring to us more of an analytics background and her viewpoint, coming at these kinds of softwares from a different perspective and certainly a student perspective. So the topic for today is cleaning and preparing data, and this is kind of where everybody is right now in their project. This is the first part, and we'll talk a little bit at the end about the next part of merging data and those kinds of things very briefly, because that'll be a separate pod class. But for now, let's take a look at our first slide. He says, okay, so Michelle, you watched the first one. I made you watch the first video, and she had to tell me it was wonderful. So what were your takeaways? It appears that you put a list together.
So I thought the first video was a perfect introduction to Stata.
You heard that. She said perfect.
So I also hadn't seen Stata before looking at it to help Professor West for this class. But I think his introductory video was a great background on all of the introductory things that you'll be using. So, I mean, describe, rename, tabulate, generate. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but those are such great ways to initially look at your data set. I'll talk a bit more about missing values and the rest of the things on this slide in a little bit, but I think the first video provided a great background, so definitely watch that if you haven't.
Now, one other thing that's really critical is this idea of missing values, because that's in everybody's data set. Or I'm sure any real data set's going to have missing values, and so by using only canned data sets from classes, you don't have to address that issue. And so one of the things Michelle is really sensitive about at this point is this idea that, I got missing data and I've got to figure out what to do with it. So she's going to talk about that a little more here shortly. So you think that cleaning data is a challenge?
Cleaning data has proven to be the bane of my existence this semester, and just in this master's program. So we have an internship this semester, and it lasts the however many weeks of the semester. But the past
half the semester now.
Yeah. So well, we're still continuing, but literally since the start of the semester, so probably 5-6 weeks, we have been working on a 3 million data point data set, and we've spent 5 weeks cleaning that data. So we truly haven't even been able to run models or do anything yet, because cleaning data is the most time consuming process in data analysis. It probably takes up 70% of your effort and time, which a lot of people really just don't realize. And I really didn't realize before I started this master's. So knowing that, when you're looking at cleaning data, as Professor West reviewed in his first video, summary statistics are a great way for you to initially look at your data. So the tabulate and summarize function in Stata are perfect for initial data exploration. Just knowing all of those summaries of what's going on in your data set will help you know the next bullet point, which is missing values.
Before you go on, when you talk about getting summary statistics in your other projects, what do you use to get those summaries? If you're not using a Stata, what is it you use?
So we're actually doing our project right now in Python and R. Okay. So we've been using those two.
So how does that compare? Is it just as easy to use those two as opposed to Stata?
I wish I was using Stata. I wish I was able to do that, because it's a lot more straightforward. It's definitely more user-friendly, which is very nice. Definitely for Python and R, you really have to know what code you're writing to get the summary statistics. It's not necessarily just one button. You have to do a lot before that.
Okay, so there's pluses and minuses, I'm sure, for both.
Yes,
so moving on to missing values.
So missing values are an important piece in any data analysis. Missing values can completely null and void any summaries you have if you don't take those into account in the correct manner, or just a manner that makes sense. So you really have to know how to look for those, either the missing values, and know whether you should be removing them completely or replacing them with an average or a mean or something of the data set.
Okay, and that's a statistical choice
Totally.
people can make.
Yeah.
So and it's described in the book, but we'll get into that more inside the project. But be aware of that.
And even with missing values, for my current internship, the project we're working on, to be able to run our model, we had to both remove and replace different columns in the data set. So it's really, you can mix them. It really depends on what that column or piece of data is providing to the overall data set, whether you'll choose to remove or replace it.
And I would say one other thing, as managers, if you've got people working for you that have to go through this process, they're making judgments all the time on what they have to remove and what they replace. So it's as important for you to be able to ask the questions about it, how they made those decisions, as sometimes it is just to run it yourself. So you need to be nimble enough to think about it both ways that Michelle's talking about. So new variables.
So as you all saw in Tableau, which you learned a couple weeks ago, creating new variables is a big piece of any data analysis, as you can create calculations or really just find different summaries of the data. And it's very big in Stata and just analytics in general. So calculating different things from the sum of different columns, or just changing and even replacing variables. That is a really very important piece that I've used since I started my master's in business analytics. Knowing when you need to move and change strings to numbers or vice versa, to be able to run different analyses is very important.
So if you just had a column that said gender, male, female, and you might want it to be 0, 1.
Yes, exactly.
And okay, now the other thing that I've seen a lot is when it comes to calculations, you can transform your variables. So if you need those logged for some reason, that would be great. And also if you need interaction effects. So just a straight multiplication of two variables together, so you can look at a specific interaction effect. What else have you got? Oh, strings versus numbers. That's kind of a biggie.
Yes. So your example of male, female to 0, 1s is a big one. Just also within different data sets, converting a long string to just even a yes, no, or a 0, 1, that's a big piece too, or 0 to 10, depending on how many options there are for different things.
Well, and then think about this. I mean, there's discussion about whether 0, 1 gender is too confining, and all of a sudden that's all you got in data.
Exactly.
Okay, how robust is my data to those different ideas that start to emerge? And so trying to think about those things in terms of data is kind of an interesting thing to puzzle over.
Definitely.
Oh, it's graphs. I love the graphs.
So these are the different graphs that, or just some of the different graphs that you'll see using Stata. So there's histograms, box plot, bar charts, scatter plots, and you can run different regressions. So as you can tell, and I'll talk about this in the next slide, but definitely not as many options as you had in Tableau. But these are still great statistical analyses that you can use, and they show great different visuals of your data that you can draw conclusions from.
So you're saying these are stat focused as opposed to maybe an alternative might be more user friendly?
Yes, definitely.
Is that fair?
I'd say this is definitely a great reflection of what you would be looking for within your data.
Okay. Oh, I jumped the gun because you've already done all this analysis for me. So carry on.
So now looking at the two different data analysis tools you've used this semester, both Stata and Tableau are definitely the most user-friendly data platforms that I have run into. And just in a comparison of the two, first I'll start with Tableau because that was what you learned first. But as you know,
that's your favorite, right?
That is my favorite.
All right.
I would like to say. visualizations and graphics are obviously my favorite and one of the best pieces about Tableau. Having those location and map tools, you don't really have that in any other analysis software or analytics software. Those maps that people were able to create with different geographic data is truly way different than anything. Also, Tableau has the ease of the drag and drop with those pills to the for the different dimensions, which is a great piece. That's what makes it so user friendly. You can just test different things out super easily, and you're not the one writing code. And then Tableau is unique in that, one, you can create dashboards, and companies use those dashboards of the different data to show different things. And the other thing within the dashboards is that live capability. That is very unique to Tableau, is that people can have live updated dashboards of data for their employees, staff, anything. So that is one of my favorite parts about Tableau.
I would add one more thing, given that we focused a lot on storylines.
Yes.
That storyboard feature, I think, is underappreciated.
Yeah.
Inside of Tableau, and we can make more use of that. And it strikes me it's one of those pieces of the software that other people don't know. So it's a little bit of a differentiator when you think about yourself using Tableau out in industry.
Definitely.
Okay.
And then going over to Stata, as you probably have noticed in your initial exploration of the platform, it's very statistics based, as we've discussed already. Being able to just distinguish different parts of your data set and create basic graphs and tables is the benefit of Stata. And I think the ease of following those tabs to create different things from your data and know how to transform different things makes Stata such a great platform to use.
So comparatively, though, it's going to be much more Stata is going to be much more command driven. This one is much more of a just move things around, kind of a little bit of an intuitive feel to it.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
All right. And then when you talk about these pieces, the visualizations and the locations, as you showed us in the previous slide, how does it compare to this?
I mean, if you remember from Tableau, you have that entire tab of probably, I don't even know, 16 different options of different visuals you can create from your data. So I think Tableau provides a lot more options, but I think Stata is the perfect one if you're just trying to do statistical analysis. I think it's a perfect way to look at data.
So one of the things we did in Tableau was cross tabs.
Yes.
And that was okay. But again, I think that's probably would you consider that a strength of Stata compared
I would.
to?
Yeah,
okay.
I agree with you.
All right. And as you said, the tabs are pretty easy to follow. And in both cases, I think you just have to jump in and try and experiment and see what you can find. So tell me a little bit about the upcoming pod class that you're thinking about.
So the upcoming pod class, I think, would be great for everyone to know is joining data sets. As you saw in Tableau, there is a tool to join data sets on different ways. But in Tableau,
like a middle join and a left and right join.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have been more specific. But so the different options of joining the data sets. But within Tableau, you can't save those joined files. You can't save that as a new Excel file or a CSV. But in Stata, the benefit of Stata and being able to join different tables, whether it's right, left, whatever it may be, is that you can save that data set from scratch as the joined one. So I think that's a great benefit of Stata, and that will be the next pod class.
And we're doing this for you, Flowers, because he's got two different joins, I suspect, inside of his data. So we're going to use Flowers as our example and see what we can figure out in terms of his data sets. But over the next week, we'll try and do that and see if we can help you folks get dialed in on your data. But for now, we're going to take off and go get our hand sanitizer, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.